Alright, today we're going to do two videos. Two videos, guys. Hell yeah, it's a good time to be bored on the weekend. So, we're going to talk a bit today about what constitutes freedom, right? Because I have different degrees of freedom on my computers, right? My main desktop, it runs Secure Blue. This is not very free because I run in the video graphics card. It's got proprietary blobs. It has a proprietary Wi-Fi Bluetooth card. It has a non-Libre booted, motherboard. And for the most part, I just kind of run whatever on it. This is like my main desktop. Anything that I need to run runs on this desktop. But I also have a couple of laptops. So I have I have one core booted tablet, and that runs Fedora. I have one Libre booted ThinkPad, and that runs Geeks. And then I have a Dell Rugged Book that runs Fedora, I think, right now. I think it's just running Fedora. So, which devices of these are free? You know what I mean? And at what point do you become not free? Because there's the Stallman definition of freedom. And if you're doing that, you're going to run a 10-year-old ThinkPad, and it's going to be Libre booted, and it's going to run like Parabola or something. Not ideal. Not ideal if you run proprietary software. Not ideal if you run games, especially. That's a big thing. So I've got like this gaming desktop, right? And it runs Secure Blue. And I've been having an argument today about somebody who says that Linux is not free because you're running Steam or you're running Google services or you can open Twitter on it, whatever it is, whatever the argument is. They say that Linux is not free because the things that you do on it are non-free. And to illustrate why or what makes something free is I have one real criterion, whatever, and it is, does this software force you to run software that you don't want to run? That is the big question. If I run this piece of software, will it force me to run something I don't want to run? That is where freedom lies. So if I'm willing to run Steam, I can run any game that runs in Steam because I can use Proton. However, if I decided that Steam was not free, like if Steam was requiring that I install something I don't want, let's say like Systemd, which has happened to me before because I was trying to host like Steam Remote Play, and I couldn't do it because I was on Artix. So now that I've switched to Systemd, I can probably do it, but that may be software I may not want to run, So if that's the case, then I would say that I don't have freedom, But for the most part, like for things that I actually care about, it's does it run on Linux and does it force me to run Windows for the most part. Like that's kind of the big question, is do I need to install Windows in order to run this? That's really where I draw the line in the sand. If you make me run Systemd, right now I'm running Systemd, but if I didn't, that would be my line in the sand. If you're forcing me to run Wayland and my computer runs X, then that's a line in the sand because like my computer doesn't support Wayland. That's actually happened before too. So there's all these, anything past does it run on my OS basically is personal preference, and that's where you personally draw the line. And it's okay to draw the line wherever you want, but there's a lot of people who are like, oh, just run Windows, you can't have anything because, you have a Gmail, you have a Twitter account, you run proprietary JavaScript, so you're not really free. And in the Stallman sense of the word, yeah, you're not technically free. And can you, fully secure your system if it hasn't been audited? And that's a big question that happens to OpenBSD, is how can you say that it's secure if you haven't had an audit? And meanwhile, Secure Blue has had 3 audits, but they were all AI audits. So did those count? Do you need to have a professional audit, or is the AI even better at that? And that's a big question. So personally, like, you gotta go by design principles, and you gotta be able to, like, Wireshark your shit and check your Git repo and all that. Windows don't have any of that. I mean, like, you can do a Wireshark, you can do, what's the other shit, like Netcat or something. Anyways, you can check what network traffic is going and, like, sniffing packets and stuff, but for the most part, you ain't getting into that source code. And so how can a real audit be done? How can you truly audit something without that? And that's a big thing with, like, macOS. It's like, yeah, security through obscurity, and that is technically security, and you have good sandboxing, but can I trust you? Because then the Russians found a back door, and that's always a big that's always a big problem. It's like, okay, now that a back door is found, now you have to go patch it, and then they have to go find a new back door, and it's a problem. So, as far as I know, my system's pretty secure. I try to keep it pretty secure. But I also have machines that are more free, and so I have, like, a whole spectrum of where I can, put my line in the sand. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to run this game because it only runs on Windows, and that's pretty much my only, like, super hard criteria. Is just, I have to be able to run it on my computer, and I'm not going to go buy Windows, or I'm not going to crack Windows or whatever in order to run it, because that's just not what I'm going to do, If it doesn't run on my OS, I'm not running it. This is kind of the way it goes. So think about that for a bit. Just, like, think about freedom, because you'll run into a lot of these kind of non-arguments, for people that don't quite understand what open source is, what freedom is, what proprietary is, and they'll try and throw all this shit at you in order to basically justify being a Windows cuck for the most part. Like, they just want to be a Windows user. They don't want anybody else having any superiority over them, so they try to just they try to just demolish everything that that you stand for. And they will try to take you down with them in order to justify their own like, horrible, like, shit, man, it's a horrible operating system. Like, you don't have to side with the corporation, okay? It's not mandatory that you side with the corpo. Like, you don't have to do that. In fact, it's actually generally a bad look, especially in current year, Like, you don't want to be caught defending the corporations, because I do that a lot, and that gets me fucked on the internet, because people are like, oh man, you're a fucking Google dick writer, and I'm like, yeah, but their stuff's really secure. I'm like, it's so secure, and I need that security, It's like, but it's Google. Yeah. So that's kind of where we're at, just, like, remember that there's a lot of bullshit that'll try to, take you down a peg and be like, oh, you're not as free as you say you are, but remember, there's degrees of freedom, and it's important to figure out where you fall on that, spectrum before you get into these discussions, because I do have a pretty hardline stance on where I determine freedom and what I'm willing to deal with as far as proprietary shit goes. This is something I deal with. And people will say that I'm not as free because of it, and it's like, yeah, that's true. But it's something that, like, Valve has the Linux support. They are doing a great job in supporting Linux, and they want to have first-class Linux support for all their games, basically. And so I can't fault them for that. I'm like, okay, I mean, you do a lot of vendor locking. Your Steam control is kind of bullshit. Your OSK is kind of bullshit. Requires a Steam account just to use the damn Wayland keyboard. But you do make a hell of a wine fork. Like, if I'm being real. So just remember, that would be like, just figure out, and you can type in the comments or whatever, I will read it eventually, where you fall on that spectrum, where you're, because, like, yeah, I mean, you can say that about anything. Like, your motherboard has proprietary blobs on some of the chips, you don't know what your GPU is running because it has secrets, all this shit, right? And it's like, yeah, but that doesn't hinder the security. The security can be proprietary, and freedom doesn't so even the most hardcore geeks chads will tell you, you know, don't throw away a usable computer because you have like proprietary Wi-Fi on it. I actually went out of the way and I got a like respects your freedom certified Wi-Fi card, and that was just because I was like, I don't want to deal with non-geeks. I don't want to know my system. I want to run the Libre kernel. I don't care if it's less secure. I don't care. I want the freedom. You know, this machine is all about freedom. It's about doing everything in Emacs and just having a good time and learning things, you know, and that's what I wanted to do. I don't care if I can't run YouTube. I will use MPV, YTDLP all day. I don't care. It's perfect for me. You know, it's like I can do whatever I want on that computer because it's my computer. I own it. And if I ran Windows, I don't feel like I own that computer anymore. I feel like Microsoft owns my computer. That's not something I want for my computer, you know? It's mine for a reason. I put what I want on it. And if somebody doesn't respect that, I don't use their software. That's just the way it goes. Alright, I'll see you guys later. Happy 4th of July. Bye.